The first symptom is not thirst. It is a subtle cramping in the lower abdomen, a signal that your biological security firewall has been breached. Within 4 hours of consuming untreated water from a stagnant urban source, the bacteria known as Vibrio cholerae begins to multiply exponentially within your small intestine. It produces a toxin that binds to the walls of your gut, reversing the flow of ions and forcing your body to flush all its water out in a violent, uncontrollable purge. You do not die from the bacteria itself. You die because you become a dry husk, your blood thickening into sludge until your heart can no longer pump it. Civilization has blinded you to the reality that water is not a right, but a volatile chemical compound that wants to kill you. When the grid goes down, the clean, pressurized liquid you take for granted transforms into a delivery system for biological warfare. So, before the dehydration sets in and the world turns to dust, take a moment to signal that you are still lucid. Leave a like to mark your coordinates on this digital map, and subscribe if you have the discipline to learn the chemistry that will keep you alive when others are drinking poison. And tell me in the comments, if you were staring at a murky puddle and it was the last water on Earth, do you know the exact science required to make it safe? Or would you just roll the dice? It helps to know who is prepared to survive the drought. Most people operate under the fatal assumption that when the apocalypse arrives, the water taps will simply run dry. This is a naive optimism. The reality is far more insidious. Municipal water systems rely on positive pressure generated by electric pumps to keep contaminants out. The moment the power grid fails, those pumps stop. The pressure in the pipes drops to zero. When this happens, a phenomenon known as back siphonage occurs. Groundwater, sewage leakage, and industrial runoff surrounding the cracked, aging pipes of the city infrastructure are sucked inward by the vacuum. The water does not just disappear. It becomes a toxic cocktail of heavy metals, fecal matter, and pathogens sitting stagnant in the plumbing of your own home. The panicked masses will fill their bathtubs with this liquid, thinking they are being proactive. In reality, they are stockpiling their own injection. The survival industry has anticipated your fear, and they are ready to sell you a solution wrapped in bright plastic. You have likely seen the advertisements for portable straws, pump filters, and expensive gravity systems. The marketing executives want you to believe that safety is a product you can buy. This is the first trap. A commercial water filter is a finite resource. It has a maximum gallon rating. It can break. It can clog. And when the supply chain collapses, there is no customer service department to send you a replacement cartridge. Relying on a branded piece of technology creates a dependency that will eventually kill you. You do not need a product. You need to understand the physics of filtration and the chemistry of adsorption. You must build a system that is infinitely renewable using the garbage and debris left behind by the society that failed you. To understand how to turn trash into a life-saving device, we must first dismantle the mechanism of filtration into its core components. There are two distinct enemies in that puddle of water: biological pathogens like bacteria and protozoa, and chemical contaminants like pesticides and heavy metals. A simple cloth or a coffee filter will do absolutely nothing against these threats. Those materials are macrofilters, designed only to stop visible sediment. Bacteria are microscopic entities that pass through fabric like a mosquito flying through a chain-link fence. To stop them, we need a physical barrier so dense that the water must fight to get through, trapping the biologicals in a geological maze. To stop the chemicals, we need a molecular magnet. This brings us to the most critical material in your arsenal, a substance that humanity has used for 5,000 years before the invention of plastic: charcoal. However, simply burning wood is not enough. You must understand the difference between charcoal and activated carbon. The industry will tell you that you need laboratory-grade activated carbon to be safe. This is a half-truth designed to keep you spending money. You can approximate the efficiency of activated carbon in a backyard fire pit if you understand the thermodynamics involved. Charcoal works through a process called adsorption, not absorption. Note the D. Absorption is like a sponge soaking up water. Adsorption is an electrical phenomenon where contaminants stick to the surface of the carbon atoms like metal filings to a magnet. A single gram of properly processed charcoal has a surface area of over 1,000 square meters. It is a labyrinth of microscopic pores. When water passes through this labyrinth, organic chemicals, chlorine, and poisons are pulled out of the solution and locked onto the carbon lattice by van der Waals forces. This is why gas masks in World War I used charcoal to filter out chlorine gas. It is not magic, it is surface chemistry. But here is the variable that will determine if you live or die. The charcoal must be made from hardwoods. Softwoods like pine contain resins and sap that will taint the water and offer a poor pore structure. You need oak, maple, or fruit trees. You need dense, fibrous cellulose that will carbonize into a rigid, highly porous skeleton. The process of creating this filtration medium requires patience and fire. You are not just burning wood to ash. Ash is useless. Ash is the result of complete combustion, where the carbon has reacted with oxygen and turned into carbon dioxide. You want to stop the process before it turns to ash. You need to create char. This is achieved by burning the wood in a low-oxygen environment or by quenching the coals with water at the moment they glow hottest. Once you have this black, lightweight carbon, you must crush it. The filtration industry pulverizes carbon to increase surface area, and you must do the same. Do not grind it into a fine dust that will wash away. You need a texture resembling coarse sand or aquarium gravel. This increases the contact time between the water and the carbon, allowing the van der Waals forces to do their work. However, charcoal alone is not a complete system. It removes chemicals and improves taste, but it is not a perfect barrier against bacteria. If the water flows too fast, the pathogens will surf right past the carbon traps. To physically block the biological threats, we must look to the geology of the Earth itself. The planet filters water through layers of sand and rock. We must replicate this stratification in a confined space. This is where the concept of the biosand filter comes into play, adapted for a scavenger scenario. The container for this system does not matter. It can be a plastic soda bottle, a PVC pipe, a bucket, or a traffic cone inverted on a frame. The geometry is irrelevant. The vertical depth is what matters. The trap that kills most amateur survivalists is the fast filter. They pour water in the top, and it rushes out the bottom in seconds. They feel accomplished because the water looks clear. Clear water can still be full of cholera. Visual clarity is a lie. For a filter to be effective, the flow rate must be agonizingly slow. We are talking about drops per minute, not liters. This slow percolation ensures that every single water molecule is forced to interact with the filtration media. The water must be tortured through the layers, stripped of its impurities by friction and time. If you are thirsty and impatient, you will compromise the process. Patience is a biological necessity. Let us construct the vertical hierarchy of your trash filter. The bottom layer is your structural foundation. You need small stones or pebbles, roughly the size of marbles. This layer prevents the finer materials above from clogging the outlet hole. Above the pebbles, you place a layer of coarse sand. Above the coarse sand, you place the critical layer of fine sand. This sand must be washed until the water runs clear before you ever put it in the filter. If you skip this step, you will be drinking mud. The sand acts as the physical net. The gaps between the sand grains are small enough to trap cysts and larger bacteria. But the most sophisticated part of the system is the charcoal layer, which should sit near the top or sandwiched between sand layers, depending on your specific setup. But there is a missing component that the manuals often gloss over. It is a biological layer known as the Schmutzdecke, or dirty skin. In a long-term stationary biosand filter, a layer of beneficial bacteria grows on the very top of the sand. These predatory bacteria eat the harmful pathogens as they enter the filter. It is biological warfare fighting on your behalf. However, in a mobile or emergency scenario, you cannot wait weeks for a Schmutzdecke to form. You must rely on the mechanical depth of the sand and the chemical adsorption of the charcoal. This means your column must be deep. A 6-inch filter is a toy. You need at least 20 to 30 inches of filtration media to guarantee the removal of pathogens without chemical treatment. You assume that seeing clear, transparent water dripping from the bottom of your trash-based filter means you have won. That is the final mistake. Visual clarity is merely a physical property, not a biological guarantee. A glass of crystal clear water can contain millions of viral particles, entities smaller than the wavelength of light, invisible to the naked eye, and small enough to navigate the gaps between the finest sand grains. If you drink that water immediately, you are playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun. The mechanical filtration system is only the first step in a mandatory two-stage process to sustain life. The greatest threat to your homemade filtration system is not bacteria, but a physical phenomenon known as channeling. Water is a lazy substance. According to the laws of fluid dynamics, liquids will always seek the path of least resistance. If you simply pour sand and charcoal into a bottle, the water will not permeate evenly through the entire mass. Instead, the fluid will carve out microscopic tunnels along the walls of the container or through loose pockets of media. When channeling occurs, the water is not being filtered at all. It is simply racing past the filtration media without interacting with it. To prevent this, you must aggressively compact the layers. When adding sand and charcoal, you must repeatedly strike the bottom of the container against the ground to force the particles to settle and interlock, eliminating void spaces. You want the water to struggle, to fight its way through every micrometer of the filter, not to slide past it. Next, we must address the issue of viruses. Sand and activated charcoal are excellent at blocking large pathogens like E. coli bacteria or Giardia cysts because these organisms are relatively massive. However, the poliovirus or hepatitis A virus are hundreds of times smaller than bacteria. They will pass through your sand filter like a fly flying through an open window. This is where the bottled water industry has brainwashed you into believing that safe water must come from a factory. In reality, you can destroy viruses using basic thermodynamics or redox reactions. Your trash filter exists to clarify the water so that subsequent disinfection methods can work at maximum efficiency. The primary and most effective disinfection method is always heat. No organism on Earth can survive when its proteins are denatured by boiling temperatures of 100 degrees Celsius. However, there is a dangerous myth that you need to boil water for 10 to 20 minutes. This is a useless waste of fuel, and in a survival situation, calories and wood are as precious as water. The moment the water reaches a rolling boil, all pathogens are dead. At higher altitudes, the boiling point drops, so you should maintain the boil for 1 minute to compensate for the lower thermal energy. Do not waste wood or gas boiling sterile water. Be pragmatic. But suppose you cannot light a fire. You are evading detection or moving through a volatile zone. At this point, chemistry is your salvation. Common household bleach, with the active ingredient sodium hypochlorite, is the most powerful weapon you can scavenge from any abandoned kitchen. But here is the deadly trap. Most people will grab the bottle of bleach with a lemon scent or fabric protection additives. You must never use scented bleach or splashless formulas. Those aromatic chemicals are toxins to your liver and kidneys. You require plain, regular bleach, typically containing 5 to 6% sodium hypochlorite. The survival formula must be precise. With clear water that is passed through your sand filter, add 2 drops of bleach per liter. If the water is still cloudy because your filter failed, increase the dosage to 4 drops per liter. Then, shake the container and wait. The contact time is the variable that decides if you live. Chlorine needs time to dissolve the cell walls of microorganisms. You must wait at least 30 minutes. If you smell the water after 30 minutes and detect no faint scent of chlorine, it means the bacterial load was so high that the pathogens consumed all the chemical. You must repeat the dosage and wait again until a slight chlorine odor remains. That smell is the chemical signal that the water is sterilized and that a residual shield remains to prevent recontamination. Another method based on optical physics is SODIS, or solar water disinfection. This technique uses UVA radiation from sunlight to destroy the DNA of bacteria. You need a transparent PET plastic bottle. Do not use glass, which blocks UV rays, and do not use opaque plastic. PET allows the ultraviolet waves to penetrate most effectively. Fill the bottle with filtered water, but leave a small air gap. Close the cap and shake violently for 20 seconds to saturate the water with oxygen. This oxygen will react with the UV radiation to create free radicals that kill pathogens. Place the bottle in direct sunlight for at least 6 hours. If the sky is cloudy, you must expose it for 2 full days. This is a method for the patient, costing 0 mechanical or chemical energy, but it demands absolute discipline regarding time exposure. Finally, we must discuss the maintenance of your trash filter. A filter is not a perpetual motion machine. The top layer of sand, the point of first contact, will quickly become a graveyard of bacterial bodies and silt. If you do not remove this layer, the filter will clog, or worse, the pressure will force contaminants through the lower layers. The golden rule is to scrape the surface. After a few days of use, or when the flow rate drops significantly, physically scrape off the top 2 centimeters of sand and replace it with fresh, washed sand. This action acts like shedding skin, keeping the system in a state of peak hydraulic performance. Do not blindly trust a single water source or a single method. Redundancy is the key to survival. You must master the physics of the sand filter, the chemistry of bleach, and the thermodynamics of boiling. When civilization collapses, the survivor is not the strongest, but the one who can turn the waste of the old world into the resources of the new. Water is life, but dirty water is a fast death. Choose to drink with intelligence or die from ignorance. You look up at the dark clouds gathering over the ruins of the city, and you feel a sense of relief. You believe that the rain is a gift from the heavens, a pure source of hydration that requires no effort to collect. This is the romanticism that will poison you. In a post-industrial collapse, the sky is not a pristine reservoir. It is a chemical sponge that has been soaking up particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxides for decades. When the rain falls, it scrubs the atmosphere of these toxins and delivers them directly to you. But the rain itself is not the primary enemy. The enemy is the surface you use to catch it. Before we dismantle the architecture of your home to find the water hidden within its walls, leave a comment below. Tell me, do you know the exact material composition of the roof over your head right now? Is it slate, metal, or the ubiquitous asphalt shingle? Your answer determines whether your roof is a catchment system or a toxic leach field. If you are learning how to turn your environment into a resource, verify your presence with a like. Silence is the sound of extinction. The vast majority of modern residential structures use asphalt shingles. These are composite materials made of petroleum byproducts, fiberglass, and mineral granules. Under the intense heat of the sun, these shingles degrade, releasing volatile organic compounds and petroleum distillates. When the first rain of the storm hits your roof, it washes a concentrated sludge of these chemicals, along with years of accumulated bird feces, dead insects, and lead dust from flashing, right into your gutter. Drinking water harvested from an asphalt roof without heavy filtration is akin to drinking diluted gasoline mixed with biological waste. This is the first flush phenomenon. If you must harvest rainwater, you need a diverter system that mechanically rejects the first 10 gallons of runoff, sacrificing them to wash the roof clean before you begin collection. Without this mechanism, your rain barrel is a toxic swamp. But why look to the sky when there is a massive, pressurized capsule of potable water sitting silently in your basement or utility closet? The standard domestic water heater is the most overlooked survival asset in the modern home. It is a glass-lined steel tank containing anywhere from 30 to 80 gallons of treated, drinkable water. Yet, when the grid fails and the pressure drops, most people cannot get a single drop out of it. They turn the faucet, nothing comes out, and they assume the tank is empty. They are defeated by a basic principle of physics, the vacuum lock. Your water heater operates on municipal pressure. Cold water pushes in the bottom, forcing hot water out the top. When the municipal pressure dies, the water sits there, trapped by gravity and air pressure. To access this life-saving reserve, you must manually break the vacuum. First, you must locate the intake valve at the top of the tank and close it to prevent back-siphonage of contaminated groundwater from the street. This isolates your clean supply. Next, find the drain valve at the very bottom of the tank. It looks like a garden hose spigot. If you open this now, nothing will happen. The water is held in place just like liquid in a straw when you hold your finger over the top end. To release the flow, you must introduce air into the system. You do this by opening the pressure relief valve, often located on the side or top of the tank, or by disconnecting the hot water outlet pipe. The moment air enters the top of the tank, gravity takes over. The water will rush out of the bottom drain valve. However, you must be prepared for what comes out first. The bottom of a water heater is a sediment trap. Over years of use, calcium carbonate, rust, and mineral deposits settle at the base. The first few gallons will be a milky, gritty slurry. Do not discard this. Let it settle, decant the clear liquid, and filter it. The water following this sediment plug will be clean, stored in the dark, and protected from biological contamination. This is your strategic reserve. If you are forced to scavenge outside your home in a commercial environment, you will encounter the sprinkler trap. You see the pipes running along the ceiling of an office building or a warehouse labeled fire suppression. You might think this is a vast network of water ready for extraction. This is a dangerous gamble. Fire sprinkler systems are often closed loops, meaning the water inside them sits stagnant for years, sometimes decades. It is not circulated. Inside those black iron pipes, the water turns into a breeding ground for anaerobic bacteria and a black, oily sludge caused by the corrosion of the metal and the degradation of cutting oils used during installation. Drinking water from a fire sprinkler system can expose you to Legionella, the bacteria that causes Legionnaire's disease, a severe form of pneumonia. Unless you have a way to distill this water, the chemical and biological load is too high for a simple charcoal filter to handle safely. Ignore the red pipes. Look for the white ones. In a scenario where standing water is absent and the tanks are dry, you must exploit the phase changes of matter to generate water from the air itself. This brings us to the transpiration bag, a technique that forces nature to surrender its moisture. Trees and plants are essentially hydraulic pumps, pulling water from deep underground and releasing it as vapor through stomata in their leaves. You can hijack this process. You need a large, clear plastic bag, not a black garbage bag. You need clear plastic to allow sunlight to drive photosynthesis and heat the air inside. Find a leafy branch on a non-toxic tree. Oak, maple, or birch are excellent choices. Avoid poisonous plants like oleander or rhododendron, as their toxins can vaporize and contaminate your collection. Wrap the bag around a section of the branch with the most leaves possible and tie it off airtight against the stem. The physics here is simple. The leaves release water vapor, which is trapped by the plastic. The sunlight heats the trapped air, increasing its humidity capacity. As the saturated air touches the slightly cooler surface of the plastic, it condenses back into liquid water, which pools at the bottom of the bag. This water tastes like the plant it came from, green and earthy, but it is biologically distilled by the plant's vascular system and physically distilled by the condensation process. It is the closest thing to pure water you can generate in the wild without a fire. However, this is a slow yield. A single bag might produce a cup of water in 6 hours. To survive, you do not need one bag, you need 20. You must turn the surrounding forest into a passive factory of hydration. Survival is not about one heroic act. It is about the accumulation of small, disciplined victories against the laws of thermodynamics. But what if you were trapped in an urban concrete wasteland with no trees and no water heater? You are surrounded by steel and glass. The sun is beating down on the asphalt. You can still use the sun to bleed water from the contaminated soil, or even from urine using a solar still. This is the ultimate test of the yuck factor. Many novices die because they cannot overcome their psychological aversion to recycling waste fluids. Physics does not care about your disgust. When water evaporates, it leaves behind the solutes. Salt, urea, bacteria, and poisons remain in the sludge. Only pure H2O molecules rise as gas. To build a solar still, you dig a pit in the ground. In the center, you place your collection container. Around the container, you pile moist soil, chopped vegetation, or even pour your own urine. You cover the pit with a sheet of clear plastic, sealing the edges with dirt and placing a small rock in the center of the plastic, directly over the container. The sun creates a greenhouse effect in the pit. Moisture rises, hits the plastic, condenses, and runs down the slope created by the rock, dripping into your cup. This is a slow, desperate method, but it proves a fundamental law. Water is never destroyed. It only changes location and state. Your job is to be the architect of that change. You have mastered the physical barrier of sand and the chemical destruction of bleach, but there remains a category of threat that laughs at these defenses. A standard water filter is physically incapable of removing dissolved solids. If your water source is contaminated with heavy metals, agricultural nitrates, or radioactive isotopes, a charcoal filter is merely a placebo. You will drink crystal clear water that tastes neutral, while lead and arsenic accumulate in your neural tissue. To defeat chemistry, you must become an alchemist. and embrace distillation. Filtration removes things floating in the water, but distillation removes the water from the contaminants. This is the only method that yields pure H2O, stripping away everything from salt to cyanide through simple phase change. You boil water into steam, leaving the heavy toxins behind, and condense it back into liquid. In a toxic urban environment where every puddle is industrial soup, distillation is not a luxury. It is the only way to avoid chemical poisoning. To construct a field distillery, use a tea kettle as a pressure vessel and a length of copper tubing as a condenser. Steam travels through the tube, cools, and drips out as purified liquid. To accelerate the process, wrap the tube in a wet cloth to shock condense the steam. However, there is a volatile trap. The first liquids to evaporate are often concentrated solvents and alcohols with lower boiling points than water. You must always discard the first 2 ounces of distillate. This devil's cut is pure poison. Throw it away before you begin collecting the safe water. Once you have secured this precious liquid, you face the lethal oversight of the storage vessel. Even pure water becomes toxic if stored in a dirty container where bacteria form a defensive structure called a biofilm. A biofilm is a microscopic shield of slime that protects pathogens from chemical attacks. Bleach often slides right off this layer. To destroy it, you need mechanical abrasion. Place a handful of gravel or coarse sand inside your empty bottle with a small amount of water and shake it violently. The stones act as a chaotic scrub brush, physically tearing the biofilm off the plastic walls. This primitive centrifuge restores your container to safety without wasting chemicals. Now we arrive at the psychological trap that kills survivors, the rationing myth. You are walking through the wasteland with 1 liter of water, deciding to save it for later while your throat burns. This is a fatal calculation. Water in your canteen does not hydrate you. Only water in your cells does. Countless hikers have been found dead from dehydration with half-full canteens. Dehydration thickens your blood and destroys your cognitive function, ensuring you will never find the next water source. You must stay at peak performance for as long as possible. Drink the water. Use your body as the storage tank, not the plastic bottle. Finally, you must understand the salt balance. In your obsession with purity, do not forget that sweat steals electrolytes. Drinking large amounts of distilled water while sweating heavily leads to hyponatremia, or water intoxication. You dilute your blood sodium until your brain swells against the skull. If you are drinking distilled water or rainwater, you must supplement it with salt. A pinch of scavenged salt maintains the electrical conductivity your nervous system requires to function. The water cycle of the New World is a rigorous gauntlet of physics and chemistry. You are no longer a consumer relying on a utility company. You are a hydro-engineer. The silence of the pipes is the loudest sound you will ever hear. When the municipal pumps cease, the countdown for civilization resets to a timeline measured in hours. Most people believe the end of the world will look like a nuclear fire. In reality, it looks like a dry faucet. The collapse is not an explosion. It is the dehydration of the social contract. The system has trained you to be a parasitic organism attached to a copper umbilical cord. When that host dies, the parasite follows. But you have severed the cord before the rot set in. By building a filtration system from debris, you reclaim your biological autonomy. While the masses fight over the last crate of plastic bottles in a looted supermarket, you stand by a stagnant urban puddle, completely at peace. You have turned the entire environment into your reservoir. You do not need the grid to be online. You only need gravity, carbon, sand, and the knowledge of how to manipulate them. Consider the fragility of the person relying on a high-end tactical filter. Filters break, O-rings crack, proprietary cartridges eventually clog. When that expensive piece of plastic fails, its owner is left with nothing but thirst. Your system is anti-fragile. If your sand filter clogs, you wash the sand. If your charcoal is spent, you burn more wood. You cannot run out of replacement parts because the world is made of them. This is the difference between purchasing safety and engineering survival. The water you produce is not just a liquid, it is a currency. In a dehydrated world, gold bars and crypto wallets are worthless weights. A liter of clear, pathogen-free water is the only asset that holds intrinsic value. It buys silence, It buys loyalty. By mastering the alchemy of water purification, you become a node of power. But this power comes with the burden of secrecy. Do not advertise your capability. The desperate mob will not ask you to teach them. They will kill you to take what you have. Keep your methods hidden. We have walked through the physics of the biosand filter and the brutal thermodynamics of the boil. We have looked to the sky for acid rain and distilled life from toxic sludge. You now possess the complete cognitive blueprint to hydrate yourself in hell. There is no longer an excuse for dying of thirst. The final test is already here. The infrastructure is crumbling, and toxins are seeping into the groundwater as we speak. You can choose to be the victim who waits for a rescue that will never come. Or you can find a bottle, find some sand, and build the machine that will save you. The human body is 60% water. Without it, you are just dust held together by a temporary will. Do not let the dust win.